It took them some period to terraform the Earth so that it could become a living habitat. And during that process, many things had to happen. So at one point, they understood that there was no tidal control over the planet. So we had chaotic weather, and you know, the oceans were they say the oceans were unruly. And so that led to the creation of the moon. And they had the moon brought in to control the climate and tides upon the Earth. And so they talk about, you know, the fact that there were systems put in place to make this a living habitat. Okay. Right. And they talked about the fact that, you know, do we think oxygen just exists on the planet, you know, and it isn't self-contained. So they talk about how that process has to be done so that we can maintain an oxygen layer around that. I mean, this is all complicated stuff. And so they're very proud, you know, of what they were able to accomplish. But then it comes to the matter of, you know, well, okay, you have this living environment, but something has to live in it. And so then the next process is, you know, how do you introduce species to an environment? So what they talk about is the fact that, you know, star seeding is really a process in itself because it's an ongoing process. They say what happened is, you know, we brought different species here that we had already created as star seeds, right, to begin that process. And so they said we regionalized them, which means that they deposited them all over the Earth.
I can see that,
Right. And then let's see what happens. You know, can they survive? We do it all the time. We have fish tanks, we have zoos, right? Same principle, right? But this started that process then. And then they said the process becomes self-sustaining. Okay, and indeed it has, because we have 9.2 billion people on this planet now, right? So yes, it's very successful. But that's not something that they looked at in the beginning. They didn't look at it and say, you know, we transform this environment and we expect this type of outcome. What they wanted to do was look at it and say, where will it go, right? What will it do? We are a very immature species compared to the rest of the universe. However, we're also enterprising. And so I think that's really one of the things that they marveled at, is that they didn't realize that would be an outcome.
And to think that they were behind it the whole time.
Indeed, yeah.
I mean, what a great accomplishment.
Yeah. So I laugh when people say, you know, oh, you know, you're the products of apes, right? Because the picture's really way bigger than that. That, you know, that is just one process. And so, you know, they sit there and say, well, you know, we over time, we introduced new things to the environment. Okay. And so that becomes part of their watching, is to be able to look and see what is going to happen with this. Is it going to survive? Right. You know, does it become a dominant species? Or, you know, is it subordinate to something else? Or, you know, does it have a symbiotic relationship? I mean, these are all important things for them to understand. And the thing is that they will admit that they are continually reaching out to us. They're telepathically connecting with us, you know. And I've had people, you know, say to me all the time, you know, sometimes I get these thoughts in my head, you know, and I tell them, I say, it's probably an Arcturian, because that's what they're doing, is they're reaching out to us. They're trying to say, we're conveying knowledge to you, right? And they're trying to get us to the point where we understand that, you know, this is so important to us, right? Not only for our survival, but for our ability to be out in that greater cosmic community, right? You know, you can't, you want to be able to go and say, welcome home, right? But in order to be welcomed home, you have to be desensitized to certain things, right? And if that desensitivity might be in the way others look, or the way in which others behave, right? And that's where we have to be right now, is that we're able to accept those things and to be able to interact with it without having, you know, paranoia or fear or any of those other things that we as humans tend to possess. And so this becomes very much part of their thing, is to be able to say, you know, your history is very much a part of who you are. However, your history is continuing, and where are you going to go with it from here? And where I think we're going to go with it is we're going to move back out into that cosmic community.
How far do you know back in time of intelligent life here on planet Earth, like the Anunnaki, the Nephilim?
Okay. So, of course, this is according to their records, all right? So there's several instances where they talk about 150 million years ago. Okay, so we do things by epic age, okay?
Right.
So an epic age for them, though, is different. We're talking, 200-300 million years. That's an epic age for them because they believe that they've been around for billions of years.
Wow.
Okay. So, but when did we see that? Okay. Becomes the question, right? And so they say really at 150 million years, there's a recognition, right? Which means that we're capable then of recognizing that there's something that's akin to us. Okay, that there is an intelligence that is relatable to us. For Earth, I think that they're believing that it was, probably 150 million years ago that we started doing that. Now, when we come to the Anunnaki, okay, so it's an outsider, right? It's a species that came from another planet and a very territorial species. They were the ones that led everybody to believe that they were gods because they had technologies, right? Technologies that others didn't have. And they were perfectly happy holding that spot, right? Because what do we do when we have a god? We devote to it, we bow down to it, we give it whatever it needs, right? And for them, that was a perfect way to be on this planet, and they did a lot of genetic testing. Where did that come from, right? Because they recognized that, their own species was having problems. Their planet was dying a slow death. That could be the end. So what are we going to do to precipitate that we can continue on with our own species? So of course you start borrowing from other planets, trying to proliferate their own species by doing that. But like I say, they also had a mentality that was very warring, very possessing, and people began to recognize that that was problematic.
Yeah.
And so, we, all of the history about our floods and everything is all contributory to what the Anunnaki did. And at one point, they tried to wipe the species out on this planet. And fortunately, they were not successful, only because one of the Anunnaki had become enamored with the Terrans that he had. And so then he said, they have meaning to me. I can't just wipe them out because otherwise we would have been back to square one, wiped out and start again, right?
They still need those slaves.
They still needed their slaves, right? And so that becomes part of that history is that, that's their contribution to the planet. And then they left, and of course they took most of what they put here with them because, we can't have the locals keeping it, right? Because there's no telling what they'll do with it. So a lot of that...
All that technology.
All that technology, right, including our pyramids, right?
Right, yeah.
And so, they're going to take the things that operate those away, and then you just have stone, right?